Hello everyone, this is General Hand Grenade. Welcome to my war room in Prince George, British Columbia. We've reached 1944 now. This is the middle of 1944. So there's only 3 turns left after this one before the end of the war. And as you can see here, the Americans and the British have landed in France, in Normandy. So here, I'll show you over here. We put them on the French card over here. There's American and British. What happened was the British landed there first, and then the Americans non-combat moved those guys in and assaulted this one here at the same, well, they assaulted this one and then non-combat moved the rest of the guys on their ships over there. And yeah, lots happening. Let's just go back to the Eastern Front here for now though. Again, big swings back and forth. As you can see here, the Germans were able to take Transcaucasia, and they didn't lose anything. Like, remember I put those 6 guys on there? Well, those 6 guys, I might as well have saved that money and went and bought myself some beer or something, because they didn't do fuck all over there. But anyway, so the Germans took that, so all of these switched over to being German units, and so they were looking pretty good right there. Plus, they still had all of these high-value units down here. And the Russians were 2 spaces away, because remember the Germans started here. So they couldn't even hit those guys down there, which gives the Germans a little bit of an opportunity to get a foothold down there. Because you look down here, I mean, the British don't have any resistance anymore, right? So they can start moving on Turkey. So the Germans are going to have to start fighting their way down to Africa and either hold their own or fighting their way up into here as well, right? But remember, there's only 3 turns left, and the Germans, like you've seen what's happening on the Western Front, so they don't have much that they can do over there. So it's kind of thinned out in here for the Russians, because you remember the Japanese attacked, right, over in Siberia there. So that has drawn away some of the Soviet units, and so they're pretty thin over here. Like they only had some easy attacks to do, which was lucky for them. The Germans didn't have much. You see that the Germans are built up now, but that's just now. Like before this turn started, like a turn ago before the turn started, they didn't have much in there, and that's why the Russians were able to take this back pretty easily, right? Like there was 3 or 4 fights in there, but they were just like 1 or 2 units each, right? So that was good for the Russians, because they didn't have anything else to use. It looks like they got lots of good stuff now. And you look down here at Tankograd, they've got their 3 tanks down here. And they've got some good units in here, but not many dudes. That's the one thing they didn't buy this time, was many dudes. Usually they're just piling the dudes on. They did take another MiG-9 this turn though. I was liking those. They're working pretty good. 2 of the tanks from Tankograd came this way this time, because they had to come back. And the dude there, like there's a complex here, so I did put a dude on. But the tanks, they railed over here. There's a rail capacity of 2 for the Russians, so they railed those over here. They couldn't afford to take any more units. And one thing too, like the Japanese were back here, right? They weren't up in here. So what I did was, I had a couple bucks left, and I tried a couple prison breaks, because if you remember the rules that I developed for the prisons, you could put them on any territory, right? If you break out of prison. So I broke out and I put a dude here, which, you know, it slows these guys down a little bit, gives the Russians a chance to get over here. So I tried 2 prison breaks, and one was successful and one wasn't. If they were both successful, then I could have put a couple of guys over here. But that's one of the things that I didn't even think about when I was developing those rules, is that it's a way of getting guys where you need them, you know, a long ways away from your factories and stuff, right? So that's was an unintended but pleasant surprise. Probably the biggest thing that happened this turn, you're probably thinking where they landed on the Western Front. That's not it. Where's all the task force markers? The task force markers are all gone. That's because the big battle happened in the navies here. And my friend Panzer King showed up just in time to help me sort it all out. He helped me roll it all and everything. He was here from the Japanese turn on, so he's helped me do this turn. Big battle. All the ships that were in Japan and that were in the Philippines came over here and assaulted the Americans. And this is what happens. Oh, you know what? I forgot to move these. Wait a minute, American turn's not over yet. We're just going to move these guys up to Hawaii so that they can repair them. Next turn, I forgot to move those guys. Okay, there we go. And these guys are moving down. I was doing all the stuff on the eastern side. I forgot to move the stuff on the western side. There we go, now I'm done. And the one thing that was drawn for the American minorities at war was this guy, these guys here. This is the Buffalo Soldiers. Nothing special with them. They don't do plus or minus or anything. What it is a free unit in the southwestern United States. So the Americans just got a free dude over there. But yeah, big battle, and it went back and forth and whittling them down. I don't know, probably went 4 rounds or something like that. They both had commanders in there, and the Japanese lost. Like it could have went either way, even with just a couple of units left. But the Americans got the rolls at the end, and the Japanese didn't. So they were the ones that hung on to the capital ships, and not the Japanese. And that's a big deal because they're one of the victory tokens, victory points in the game for both sides was who had the most capital ships. So that's a difference of 2, right? One for the Americans and one less for the Japanese, or vice versa, really. And so having them keep these 2 battleships, and the Japanese losing their Yamato and their other battleship was a big deal at the end of that fight. And you can see what's going on here. With 3 turns left, the Americans got just enough time to get these guys down to the end. They just got themselves improved shipyards as well. So both them and the Japanese got improved shipyards. So I don't think the Japanese can get any more, like there's no point in even buying anymore. 1, 2, 3, yeah. Yeah, there's no point in buying any more capital ships now after this. So they're going to have to kill some American capital ships if they're going to get that point, because all they have is 1, 2 battleships, and plus they got the Yamato and the carrier, so that's 4. And the Americans have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, the Americans are going to win that point if the Japanese don't find a way to take that off. And I don't think that the Americans are going to assault Japan. Like with 3 turns left and not having a navy to speak of for the Americans, it would be pretty tough for them to like I've seen Japan get assaulted before. The last game I played, I was the Japanese player, and man, it's tough to take that island because not only do you have a shit ton of stuff on there, but it's a mountain, and trying to amphibiously assault a mountain territory, I mean, you're just like banging your fucking head against the wall, you know. So I think what the Americans are going to try to do, take a look at the rules there and see where the points are. Like, I think there's some points down here for the Japanese, for instance. So they might come down here and try to take some of those points away from the Japanese down here, right? Not much happening in here. The British did go after, there used to be 3 partisans up here for the Italians. The British managed to take a couple of them out. The British are winning the battle in here because the Japanese were busy with the Americans. It's not really much of a battle though, right? Like, I don't know, I'm going to have to take a look at the points. I don't think that there's much that the British can do. There might be something to do with taking Hong Kong back, I don't know. I'll have to take a look. It's at this point of the game where there's only 3 or 4 turns left that you start playing to the points, right? And it's kind of silly that way, you know, like you're doing things that you wouldn't necessarily do. But at the same time, I mean, I've been playing this game for weeks, right? At some point in time, you got to end the damn thing, right? Italy is completely gone down here in Africa, and the British have solidly taken it. But like I was saying from the other side of the table there, now they've got the Germans here, so the Germans could come down here. But I think that with the amount of time that's left in the game, and the fact that the Germans are going to fight the Russians, and they got the Western Front coming on there, I don't think that the Germans could really do anything down here. It's more likely that the British could do some damage up in Turkey there. But I don't think Turkey's really worth much to them, so I don't see why they would do that, but we'll see. We'll see. The French, I'm going to see what happens when you take the capital back, because That's pretty. They're pretty close to taking that capital back right now, right? Like the Germans could put a few units on there, but not many, right? Right now it's the Germans. I think they're gonna try to aim for having all of their home territories at the end of the game. With the Americans getting in the game as early as they did, I knew that something like this was going to happen, and I'm glad. I'm glad that I was patient, because if I would have attacked the coast there 2 turns ago with the Americans, the Germans would have swallowed them up, right? Like the Americans, sure, they could have taken that territory, but then they would have been knocked back into the sea, right? Whereas you look at what they've got now. I mean, they've got 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 units there in Normandy, and then there's all those units for the British and the Americans on that blue card over there. So, and then they've got these guys here and those guys there. So these guys in the Azores are all right here. These guys are going to hit France next, or maybe north of France. We'll see. You know, like there's Belgium and there's the Netherlands. Who knows? They could even go to Western Germany with these if they wanted to, right? That's why we put this naval base on here, because if they didn't put the naval base down in the Azores, then they would only be able to reach here. Like the transports would only be able to go 2 spaces. It takes 3 to get into this one right here. That's what I was talking about, how it's the way the sea zones are broke up in this game. It's a little harder to get across the water, right? So they can make it to here, but they can't make it to here without that naval base, and that's what they've got there now. What else? But yeah, like the French liberating those 2 territories, the Free French actually they're up to $7 now. Woo! Big times. I don't know what they're going to spend all their money on, but they've got lots of units down here. Not very high price units, but lots of units. And I didn't spend it all, the money that they had. So thinking that they might get their capital back, then they're going to be able to put some units down on France, hopefully. I'm going to read the rules, though. I'll let you know I'll let you know by the end of the next turn what happens with Vichy France, because I want to read that now that I've landed there. Like you'd think I would have read it by now, but the problem is there's a million things I gotta read. You know, I've played the game before a few times, but this time I wanted to really slow down and absorb every single rule. You know, because there's so many of them, right? And I've learned a ton of stuff playing this game and taking so long to play it. Like I probably doubled my knowledge of this game, of Global War 36, by playing this game the way I did it. And so my next step is to find out what happens at this point in the game, and to the end of the game, right? So anyway, I will be back in 6 months. Well, 1944 turned out to be true to form. When I say that, I mean it just like what really happened in 1944 when Operation Overlord happened and the Allies took Normandy here. As you can see, Paris is liberated. I'll show you what's on there in a minute. I've got all these cards over here. There's so much stuff on here that it would be like you couldn't tell what was on what place there until I put them on cards. But yeah, Paris is liberated. However, Vichy France still remains because it's tucked in behind here. Vichy France is the next to be assaulted in the first part of 1945. But as you can see, the entire Atlantic wall has gone right up to Denmark, right? All of it, plus France, and plus this territory here. So in order for the Germans to take Paris back, they would have to hit this with these 4 tanks here and then blitz into here. Panzer King had played the Germans in the first half of 1944. It's the only time he played a nation. And so, like, he came into this game cold and he wasn't exactly certain of what was going on. And there's a lot of units in here. So he kind of made one mistake in that he left the jet bomber and the jet fighter on Paris. Like, he had attacked down here and he only had 1 movement space left. So those 2 were lost, which is a drag because they were just put on the board. So they only got used once. But I mean, Germany is in dire straits regardless of anything that like leaving the bombers or the jets there. But Germany, yeah, like Germany's in big trouble. But I tell you, I learned a lot playing this game. Not just as in the rules, like I was mentioning several times throughout this game, but also when it comes to coming across the water and assaulting Europe here. Before, what I had done was just gone over there as fast as I could because the game was getting late, and just hitting it. You know what I mean? Just hitting Europe as quickly as I could. Whereas this time, I think I waited 2 or 3 turns with the Americans before I did that. I waited until they had, you know, double the transports backed up and ready to go. And the British had their guys ready to go. And lots of Air Force for both sides. So that when they did hit the beaches, they had lots of air support and they had lots of units. One of the things that helped was hitting the beach with the British and then landing the Americans there. Because I've spoken at great length before about how tough it is to do an amphibious assault in this game because of the fact that you can only use your infantry and your planes on the first round. And so, you know, like it's really hard to get tanks and artillery and things like that onto the beach because you'd need a lot of transports in order to have that many infantry, plus those things as well, right? And so this worked out really, really well, hitting it with such great force and with a lot of air power, because the air power was able to go on that first round of attack as well. And so, you know, like it wasn't just dudes rolling at 2s, you know, on a 12-sided dice. It was also the planes rolling at 6s or 7s or 8s, you know, depending on whether you had a commander or not. So anyway, that's why this has been devastated so totally in just 2 turns, is because of the way that it was done. Like it took me a week to do it. You know what I mean? I'd come in here and after work and I'd sit here and I'd look at it for a little while and stuff. Actually, it's been a couple of weeks since the Americans landed over here. So, you know, like I've had a lot of time to sit there and think about it, right? And I think that this is definitely the way to go, is to take your time and wait until you're totally ready and then just hit the beaches and keep going, you know, rather than just dropping off as soon as you can and bringing some more over and dropping them off and then having the Germans wipe them out every time. Because you see now what's going on is the Germans are all back in their home territory here, right? And there's not many of them. Like you look here, there's not many Germans back here. They've got a lot up here and they could bring them back, right? Like they've upgraded these 2 complexes here, so they're putting 3 on each time on these places, so they can bring their units back. Plus, they got a ton of money. Even though they've lost a ton of money this time, they still have all that money in the bank, right? So they're going to be able to collect less next time. But like, you look at how much money here. Let me just look at it here. 50, 60, 70, $83. So they can buy a ton of shit. Like and they've got 4 major complexes over here, so they could put 20 things on. But the problem is, then the Russians then the Russians are putting stuff on here, and the Germans aren't, and the Russians are coming through here. Like the Germans could hold off for a turn. You know what I mean? It's going back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. Plus, they've got these guys down here from Turkey. But then what? You know what I mean? There's nothing in behind those if these guys go back here, because they're going to have to go back there or lose Berlin, right? Now, one of the things that is perplexing to me, maybe I think it's a bit of an oversight, is that they changed a rule this year, and they did it for good reason. The rule that they changed was that the Russians and allies couldn't go to war until Berlin fell. You know, until somebody took out Berlin, the Allies and the Soviets couldn't attack each other. And they did that because players were able to game the system. You know what I mean? They were able to run down there as fast as possible with a transport and attack any country in South America, which brought Americans into the war in like the third or fourth turn, which is way sooner than it should happen, right? But that's what happens when you violate the Monroe Doctrine that says that you can't attack anything in the Western Hemisphere, or that brings the Americans into the war. And so it was kind of disingenuous for the Russian player to do that. So the way they fixed that was saying that you couldn't attack each other, the Allies and the Comintern couldn't go to war until Berlin fell. And at the time, it probably sounded like a good idea. But the problem is, you look at the game right now, and okay, so at this point, there's 2 turns left in the game, and you're looking at, okay, how do I win this game? And you're looking at how points get taken. Now, for the Russians, there's a few ways they get points, but one of them is they can get up to 12 points for having places that aren't their home country. So like here, and not Viipuri either, because Viipuri would be part of another national objective. So if they took this one here, and this one here, and this one here, and this one here, that's one national objective right there, right? Or one victory point to get. So these guys are one space away from their territories. But another one is each territory that's worth at least 1 IPP, and there's a bunch of them here, and there's 3 of them down there, Portugal and Madrid and Leon, Castile, I think. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Yeah, 9 points right there for the Russians. And the Allies can do nothing about it. I mean, you look at the amount of stuff they have over here. So when you get to this point, like I don't think that there's any way that Berlin can fall in this game. Not very likely. And despite the fact that there's so many Allied troops in there, and the Russians are coming on, there just isn't enough time in the game. Like if this game went to 1946 or 47, sure, you could take Berlin out. But even games in before this one and now in this one, I don't see how you can take Berlin out in this game before the game ends, because of that time limit in the game where it ends in 1945. There just isn't enough time. And even if you got them on the very last turn, well then what? You know what I mean? So then you can go to war, but the game is over. So the thing is, like, if I'm here at this point in time, as the Allied player, for instance, I'm going to take a look at how do I win this game? Where are my victory points? Where are the victory points for the Axis? Where are the victory points for the Comintern? Because the goal is not to take Berlin. The goal is to have more points than the other 2 teams, right? So I need my points as the Allied player, and I need to make sure that the Comintern and the Axis don't have as many points as me. And so all I can do is make sure that the Axis don't have that many points. I can't do anything about the Comintern, and vice versa. If I'm the Russian player, there's nothing I can do about the amount of points that the Axis have, right? Like down here, 2 turns left in the game. One thing that I could be doing is bring a whole bunch of Russians down here. You know what I mean? And then I got this territory, this territory. You know, there's territories down here that are worth $1 each or more, right? And so that would be an easy way to top up that 12 points, right? I could get 12 points easily doing that. But I can't do that. You know what I mean? Plus, I look at the victory objectives for the for the Allies. There's nothing I can do about that. You know what I mean? Like, you look at this transport over here. I could get this transport to this naval base. I could whip over here, drop one dude down on the United States there, and that negates 1 victory point. If at any point in the game an enemy troop has landed, or an enemy unit of any kind has landed in the continental United States, then the United States loses that point, right? So, but I can't do it because these guys aren't at war. You know what I mean? So I think that rule is going to have to be tweaked a bit. I like the fact that they changed it so that you couldn't just run right down there with the Russians and bring the Americans into the war. You know, that was the right thing to do. But maybe the right thing to do would be, you know, like say at this point here in 1945, you've got 2 turns left, like going into 1945. Now you can declare war if you want. You don't have to, right? Like if the Russians aren't sitting very good, why would they declare war against the Axis? In fact, if I was the Russian player right now, I wouldn't declare war against the Axis in this game, because I've got more points to lose than they do. You know what I mean? Like I was showing you that transport over there with the Russians. Yeah, I could take that point, but America could come over here and take all of these points from the Russian player, right? So then the American has to make a choice, right? Can I take more points off the Axis? Do the Axis have more points? You know, or should I be taking them off the Russians? Like it gives you that option, but the way it is now, you have no option, right? You could do everything possible. Like really, the Allies have played this game flawlessly, right? Like you look at Africa, they own all of Africa. They own the Mediterranean. They own the Western Front. You know what I mean? They couldn't do anything about Spain because they're not in Spain, right? That's between the Russians and the Germans, right? They've got no subs out here. You know, there's nobody convoying them. The Japanese are stuck back here near their homeland, right? Because they lost this battle out here against the Americans. Calcutta here, they're holding strong. Like there's no way between now and the end of the game that the Japanese are going to be able to take Calcutta. It's just not going to happen. And it's more likely at this point that the Allies can deny those points down there. Like there's some points down there in those islands for the Japanese. There's no way that they can deny those points. Or I mean, it looks like more likely that they could deny those points than Japan could get those points. You know, based upon where the navies are sitting and how much time's left in the game and stuff, right? The Japanese could get this point. This point looks assured. Like one of the points is who has more on the border here, Japan or Russia. And to me, it looks like by the time these next 2 turns are over, it's probably going to be Japan over here. But anyway, all I'm saying is the Allies have played pretty close to a flawless game here, and they could end up losing just because they're not allowed to attack the Russians at any point until Berlin falls. And there's no way Berlin's going to fall. You know what I mean? Like, now that Denmark is gone, like one could hit here and then the other could come in here. But I mean, like I was saying there, Germany goes next. They got 83 bucks in the back. You know, they're going to pile a shit ton of stuff on here. They don't even have to attack anybody. They just have to pile all that stuff on there and nobody can get to them. You know what I mean? It's just not going to happen. They probably, well, I don't know if they could hold on to all of their territories, but they might be able to hold on to all of their territories in their home country there. I'm not so sure. Like that's going to be pretty close. But there's just no way Berlin is going to fall. So there's no way that the Comintern and the Allies can attack each other. Anyway, enough about that. You can see what's happened over here on the Eastern Front. Germany did attack again, and Russia attacked back, just like has been going on. And Russia can't afford to put as many things over here because Russia doesn't have as much money as they used to have, right? So it's a good thing they had all of these little tanks up here. Like those are the little tanks that they bought before they went to war, because they couldn't buy medium tanks, right? All they could buy was little tanks. They couldn't buy these Katyushas because they hadn't unlocked that technology yet. So they had a ton of these little tanks that they were using, and they've brought them down from Norway and Sweden and Finland, and they've all got chips under them now because they've all won battles, right? And they're really doing a world of good for the Russians here. Down here, the Germans had decided to go down towards Africa. It looked like it was open, like all this stuff wasn't really here before. Let me just move this a little bit closer. All this stuff wasn't here before the British turn. Like it was way down there in Abyssinia, and it was over near the French over there. So like they started down that way, but then the British came back and they took them here Like they took them back here and they took them back here, and now they've got all that stuff there, and they've got 2 turns. Like it's much more likely that the British are going to take Turkey than Turkey's going to take Africa, right? So it looks pretty bleak for the Germans over there. Like they're probably better off taking those units, since Turkey is only worth a couple of points anyway. Taking those units and making sure they can hang on to Transcaucasia, which is worth 5, and North Caucasia, which is worth 3. But they've got that 2 turns to do that. It's going to be tough, that's for sure. But if they keep coming down this way with these units, then they might be able to hold on to this area down here, which, like I said, is worth like $8 is a lot in this game, right? When you look at all of Turkey, that's only worth 3. All of the Middle East, I don't think, is worth 8, or maybe worth 8, you know. But it's it's not worth going that way. Let's just put it that way, right? When all you'd have to do is hang on to those 2 territories for the $8, because there is another victory point. If your income, I can't remember. It's either if your income's over 50 or if you're 50 above your starting income. I'm going to have to look at that again. So we looked at here briefly. Let's just go down here. The Americans, they had to look at this quite a long time, because Japan's got more boats than they do. The Americans are going to win the battle of capital ships here. I talked about that in the last turn. Like there's no doubt those ships, they're not even going to buy planes for those. Those ships aren't even going to leave this spot right here. There'll be 5 capital ships back there. So the Americans can lose these capital ships right here, and that's no problem, as long as the Japanese aren't going across the water. And in fact, it doesn't matter if they do or not, because America's last thing they're going to do in this game is put 3 capital ships on, right? And there's nothing that can stop them from doing that. Right now, the Japanese only have 3 capital ships. So, you know, it would take them a bit to get over there, let's put it that way. But the Americans, they were looking at, how can we get down here, right? How can we get down here and take away some of these points? Like this is a point here. I think this is a point. The Philippines is a point. These are points for the Japanese, right? Malaya is a point. And like Saigon and Hanoi, those are victory points. I think they've got these ones. You know what I mean? I think the Allies have got these ones secured, with the British over here with the land troops, although the Japanese could come down in behind them. But you got to remember, we've got this navy down here, and that navy, and oh, I guess I put a plane on. I was looking, where's the boats I put on? I guess I put a plane on that time. But anyway, the Americans wanted to come down here, but the problem with down here is that too many things could hit them. Like they don't have a whole lot of warships. You look there, and it looks like they got lots of boats and stuff. But 2 of these things are these coastal subs who were never going to make it down there, right? This battleship wasn't going to make it. The Iowa could make it, but like it could go more spaces. So really all they had to take down there was the Iowa, the submarine, and the destroyer. So after a long look at it, the safest thing they could have done was brought everybody here with a blocker, this destroyer as a blocker, because then there's, I think they can hit them with this 1, 2, 3, 4, and this 1, 2, 3. No, so they can only hit that navy right now with this, with these 2 boats right here, right? Which is good. I mean, they could use this plane right here, I think, too. And I think they've got these boats up here, but that's not enough to take this navy out, I don't think, right? With 2 boats here and 3 boats here, I don't think that'd be enough to take out the American Navy down here. And but without that blocker there, every single ship Japan had could hit this navy. So anyway, that's what they had to do. So what they're going to try to do is, on the last turn of the game, that American Navy there, they're going to try to take the Philippines back, or one of these islands. Like they're going to try to take a point away from Japan, because at that point the Japanese can do nothing about it, right? It's the Americans are the last player in the game, right? They go last. Well, the Chinese go last, but the Chinese don't have any units. So the Americans are going to go last in the game. So whatever they do can get or negate a point without anybody being able to come back after that, right? So all the Japanese can do is put a wall up in the Philippines or something, but they got to be careful. Like if they move all their ships down here, then the Americans could always come up here. Although, funny enough, Japan is not worth a point. But I think though, what might happen is you could force Japan to surrender. You know what I mean? If the Americans went up there and took out Tokyo. So anyway, it's just a matter of seeing how the next turn goes, and then the last turn, it's about everybody going to their points, right? Right now, we're already setting it up with 3 turns left. Well, I mean, at the beginning of this turn, there was 3 turns left. So now there's 2 turns left. Now it's the setup and then the punchline, right? And that goes for everybody in this game. Like here, even the Italians here, what they did this turn was they bought a tank, and they're going to buy a tank on the next turn too, because the only points that are available to them at this point now, like one of the points they could have gotten was more capital ships in the Mediterranean. They're not going to get that one, right? Another point would have been if the nationalists had won the Spanish Civil War, that they're not going to get that point. So now what they can do is they can get a point for every territory they have that they didn't begin the game with. And there's not many of them, right? They don't have any transports, so they can't go across the water and get any. And Germany's got everything around them, right? Except for Switzerland. Now, these guys have got a lot of units. And on this side of the board over here, except for the Americans, the Italians are going last. So they'll be able to see if the Americans are going to be able to hit Rome, you know what I mean? Or, you know, be able to hurt them in any way, shape, or form. So they'll have if they have I guess one more tank, then they'll have a leader there. They've got a lot of infantry. They've got a mountain infantry there. They've got a fighter. You know, they'll see, can I go and get a point? Maybe can I get 2 points? You know what I mean? It's just a matter of what's available and what can the Americans do after that to them, right? So they're hoping that the answer to that is nothing, that the Americans are going to be busy with the Germans up north there. But anyway, even Italy is looking at how they can get a point in this game. So that's the way we sit here. I didn't mention about Vichy France. So Vichy, I was reading about it, and it's kind of weird that you can't just take Paris and then Vichy France falls, right? I've taken every space up there in the French home country except for the capital of Vichy, and so what happens is you take out that spot right there where the Vichy capital is, and then all of the other spots here, and all of like these units here, these will go back to the Free French, right? The only thing, and like all of these spaces here, everything with a Vichy roundel on it will go back to the Free French. The only thing is you have to roll these boats, kind of like you had to roll when the Vichy rule is instituted, where you roll to see if they get scuttled or if they become Free French or Vichy or German. So you're going to roll, and a 1 to 6 they become Free French. 7 to 9 I think they get scuttled, and 10 to 12 they become German. And there's only 3 boats here, and they're pretty small ones. So the only thing that I could see happening that would make any difference is if the French were able to get the transport here, because then they can go do something with it, right? They've got all these units down here, and they've got 2 turns, so it would be nice if they got that transport. Then they could, who knows? Maybe they could hit Italy or Greece or something, right? I don't know. But anyway, that's what happens with the Vichy. Weird that you don't get it back after you take Paris, but I guess that's the way it goes. If I'd have known that like 2-3 turns ago, this is why you got to read ahead, right? If I'd have known that 2 or 3 turns ago, then maybe I would have had some transports coming around here and taking out Vichy on this turn that just happened, like the turn that I took out Paris, right? Because I don't think it's more important to take Vichy out than to take Paris out, but it would have been nice to take that out now as well. Although it should fall, because I didn't show you there, but on the blue card way over there, here I can just move this over. On the blue card, that's what's on Paris right now, which is right next to Vichy. So there's French units, there's British units, and then back here, there's American units as well, right? And there's a British and American unit over here. So I think the Vichy will fall on this turn. Anyway, I think that's about it. The partisans did not do a damn thing. I rolled for partisans all over the world this turn, and nobody did anything. And no new ones were created. Kind of weird. One of those turns where you just weren't going to roll 11 or 12. Anyway, that's it. So only one more video left in this series. That'll be 1945, and we'll add up the points at the end, and we'll talk about all those points and how they got them and everything. So take care, everyone. General Hand Grenade out.